And of course, this Sunday will mark exactly 70 years since that historic march. And of course, for the past 4 years, at least this is the 4th edition, we here at Morning Live have also marked Women's Month by hosting some really auspicious panel discussions. And this morning is no different. Leanne has made her way over to Radio Park. So let's take you there and hand it over to Leanne to find out more about today's panel discussion. Over to you, Leanne.
Thank you very much, Sakina, and welcome to those of you that have just tuned in for this, as you've heard, 4th edition of this very special conversation. And I must say, it's one of those conversations that we certainly look forward to as we get to host some incredible women and talk about issues that affect us on a daily basis. And it's wonderful to be a part of this and to have these wonderful minds with us. But the reason that we're here is for women and the progress of women. And it's something that many people wonder, like, why do we have to speak about it? Well, we do, because women are not there yet. Women are trying. Women are working to try and etch their way into particularly the corporate sphere, and that's something that we are going to focus on. But when we go back and we look where we were 70 years ago, and that, of course, is what we will be looking back at on the 9th of August, when 20,000 women walked to the union buildings against past laws. They then stood there in silence for a half an hour. And when you read back and look at the archives, it was only broken by infants, perhaps that they were carrying, that stood there, because they stood in silence together as a powerful tool to demonstrate that if you do stand together, you don't need loud voices to make an impact. You need to stand together. And that's something that I think is a very powerful lesson to learn out of it. The role players that were there, each one of them had a story. They didn't just land up there. There was a story that led them there. And that's what I want to do today. I want to meet the women that have titles, but hear their story and then speak about what they're doing. So let me introduce you to them, because they really are a phenomenal bunch of ladies that we've gathered here that have all managed to get to where they are through hard work, commitment, and no doubt some very, very interesting stories along the way. So here we go. Our first guest that's sitting right next to me is Nosizwe Nokwe Makamo, who of course is the board chairperson of PRASA. An absolute honor to have you. Then next to her, we've got Krishalia Patru, who is the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Turbo Rep. Good to have you as well. Ronelle Klein is the Chief Executive Officer of Fluid Rock Governance Group. Ronelle, welcome. And somebody that I don't think I need to introduce, but I certainly will do. This, of course, is our Group Chief Executive Officer here at the SABC, Moosa Chabedi. So lovely to see you again. And then, of course, finally, sitting right opposite me, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Candace Hartley, the Group Chief People Officer at Eskom. Love that title. I love it. It's an important title. We'll talk more about it as we get by. Okay, so let's start at the beginning, and I'll start here with you, Chair. You're right next to me. I'm going to ask you to grab your microphone. There we go. Okay, so you have got such an interesting story. You really do. I mean, let's go back to Moscow, because your journey began from Moscow, later to Baku, to study chemical engineering, of all things, back in those days. You were far from home. You were entering a technical world in which few people looked like you. What frightened you most as the little girl that went and started that journey?
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers. Thank you so much for having me here. So I hear your question, but the answer is different.
Good.
You say, what frightened me? When I left, or when we left, on the contrary, I was super excited, because it was the first time that I had left, you know, the home environment. So I was super excited. It is on arrival that the excitement dissipated, because it was a completely different environment, and they spoke a completely different language. At the time in Baku, they spoke English. They spoke Russian. We didn't know Russian, and when we were told we're going to have to study in Russian, that totally blew us. But I must say that the system was such that it accommodated all foreign students that came from all over the world, by the way. We met people from countries whose names I'd never heard. And that was most exciting. But I think the challenge was going into university after the language course and immediately having to study in a language that was foreign, and study chemical engineering in a language that was foreign. That was terrible.
As a woman, did that matter at that time?
You know, I'll say something. In those days, it was chemical engineering in the Soviet Union was considered a female specialty.
Amazing.
Not mechanical, not all the others, but chemical engineering, the class was full of women, young ladies. So that was an interesting, for me that was mind-blowing, because when I left and said I wanted to study chemical engineering, I was unique. Everybody said, why would you choose chemical engineering?
Yeah.
And then when I get there, I'm finding the class is all women.
So that was a nice journey for you. That really was. So that's great to hear. Krishalia, let me come to you, because as a young woman, I mean, I think from what I've read about you, you started working in customer service at Woolworths. You know, what did success look like to her? This young customer service person who's now come up to this position that you're in right now. Talk to me about you and what you believed was possible at that time.
Okay, so at the time when I started in Woolworths, I would say I just wanted to reach management level, and I believed in myself, but I didn't have the funding to study at the time. There was universities I applied to and was declined because although I was from a government school, it was said to be from a privileged school in that sense. So I was declined in that. And then I further went on and I worked in many other male-dominated industries, like a plumbing company and a labeling company. And then eventually, after getting married and having a very supportive partner, I managed to finish my procurement degree at the age of 35, which is like 3 years ago. Now I'm giving away my age. But I persevered, I believed in myself, and now I sit in a seat that I never thought I would sit in, and I think it's possible for anybody out there to get to this position. I am in a male-dominated industry, but with good mentors on my side.
Yeah, and
so
that's important. I want to talk to mentors in a moment, but I'm still taking my little journey back as we go down the line, because Renal, you're interesting as well, because before you advised boards, you were a very young attorney learning that knowing the law and being correct did not automatically mean that powerful people were going to listen to you. It took a lot for people to listen to you. So what did you sort of first feel? And how did you feel when you sort of tried to speak, even though you had the knowledge, but people weren't necessarily listening? Did it matter that you were a woman? What was it like for you trying to break into this?
Absolutely, and I think it's still every day means that you've got to find your voice, regardless of your title or your position, because I think it's a daily struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle, sometimes it's a journey, and sometimes it's quite joyful. So we started the business because we were trying to survive as we were 3 friends, and we wanted to actually have more time available, because as company secretaries working with boards, you don't have evenings, you don't have weekends, and I can 100% say starting a business is way worse, and we weren't quite prepared for it. And you know, the journey has been incredible, but as you say, it is a very, very a daily thing of waking up, putting on your armor, and going out there and trying to make sure that you actually, for the first level is survive, not thrive, but hopefully we get to thrive.
Yeah. I like that, putting on your armor and going out there, because it does sometimes feel like a battle. It's a battle to get through days, it's a battle to get through the corporate world. And Moosa, I come to you now because, you know, this is a very different beast when you come into the SABC. I mean, it's a massive beast to have to take under control. But this isn't where you started. I mean, you have been through the corporate sphere, you've been through so many different positions to get to where you are today. Again, as a woman, and you're coming in and occupying this position as I think the only, I mean, we were celebrating last year 90 years of the existence of the SABC. If I'm not mistaken, you come in as only the 2nd woman to ever hold this position as GCEO. But let's go back a little bit. Your journey through this crazy world with your armor on?
I think that's such an important statement in terms of, as women, we need to be extremely resilient. You know, we always have to prove ourselves. I always say that as women, we come into a room and no one believes us, and until we prove ourselves. but the other gender walks into the room and everybody believes them until they prove themselves otherwise. So I wanted to journey and literally navigate a space where there were very few women. But I think what's important is that the women that I've met have been extremely critical in creating not just mentoring, but the sponsorship space. Because I think mentoring is great in a sense that you get the great advice, but sponsorship is different because opportunity is created. So I've been very blessed in a sense that I've met women who've believed in my capability and who've instilled confidence in me at a time when I needed it most. And I think that's what's the most important thing, in a sense that, you know, when you learn the art of the possibility, and that's what carries you through your career. I've had many rejections in my life, and wanted to learn to dust yourself up very quickly and literally move forward, you know. So that's what's important. You don't always know the answer, but what's important is how you pivot from that position into the next one. And that's what I've learned throughout my career, that it's not always going to go your way. But what's important is your ability to literally be able to stand up again and again and again. And I think that's what got me to sit here this morning.
That's amazing. I often listen to sportsmen and women, and those are the kind of lessons that they give. And there was one, I think it was a TED talk that Roger Federer gave, and he spoke about the amount of points he lost. And if he had to count the points he lost as opposed to the points he won, he would have given up a long time ago. And that's something that always drives me, because I think to myself, focus on the ones you win that point and move to the next one. Because if you keep on dwelling on the ones you've lost, you're never going to get anywhere. And it's always an important lesson when we move forward in corporate, because, I mean, you've come, Candice, from HR, you've moved through the ranks from psychology to a graduate role, then built this career in very different industries, and now you find yourself in Eskom. And I mean, to be the people officer in Eskom, it couldn't have been hard. I mean, obviously times are looking a lot better there, but, you know, these are kind of things that you also need to focus on, are the people behind everything. But let's get to hear your story and how you got through the ranks.
Yeah, and I think, Leanne, I was sitting here and I was thinking about my journey, and there's a quote that I often share. It says that women hold up half of the sky, and it's neither right nor just for us not to be in the highest levels of decision-making in society, whether that's in corporate, whether that's in public sector, whether that's in the NGO space. And I think that's what essentially has built my career over time, is just the sense of justice, the sense of when you start making your way through your career journey, you don't lead with your gender, but you lead with the passion for what you are doing. And I've had the fortunate position to have worked through many varied industries, lots of roles I've held on the continent, worked some international roles. And what I've found is the anchor to my career is really to be passionate about what you're doing and the problems that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect, because, Chair, if I come back to you now, are women being entrusted with operational authority? Because this is a big thing. We can all sit here and we gather some really powerful women, but I want to know how much authority there is. Or are we still mostly when you look around and you see at PRASA, obviously in your position, but looking lower, do you find that there are more support roles and high-risk turnaround positions? What is the corporate world looking like when it comes to women and authority?
So in terms of operationally, it's been a journey, Leanne. It's still a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking only about PRASA, but I'm talking about in the industry. To get women into the operational sphere, it takes a lot from women. So one of the speakers, just to echo what she said, you've got to put on your armor when you're in the operational sphere. And you've got to actually excel beyond that which is expected of other people. So at PRASA, in particular, we have deliberately put in mechanisms, and that's what corporates should really do. We've put in mechanisms that allow women to come through the ranks at an operational level. And I'm glad to say we've got two ladies sitting here in the audience who have come through the ranks on the operational side. So what do corporates have to do? Corporates have to recognize that society itself, being as patriarchal as it is, does put blind barriers, or should I say sublime barriers, for women to get ahead on the operational side. So you've got to have a deliberate intervention that ensures that you're putting in enablers that will allow women to be able to, one, have the STEM background, and two, to be able to have enablers that within the organization, they're able to progress further. You have to be deliberate about it. It is not automatic.
You know, you're making me think of something, because when I was reading up last night, and there was this idea that came to me when I was looking back at 70 years ago. It's almost like those barriers were much more visible. The barriers for women now are actually a little bit invisible. And this is a real thing, because today's gatekeeping is there. It's succession lists, it's appointment panels, it's procurement processes, salary decisions. All of these kind of things are there acting as gatekeepers. Let's talk to your role, your industry. Is it the same? Do you resonate with what has just been said?
Yes, I think in the engineering sector, it's actually worse trying to push past those barriers, being a female, because of the male dominance. But I think if you believe in yourself and you know your worth, you have to push through and fight for what you believe in. But it's not easy. It's not an easy journey, and it hasn't been an easy journey for me.
Yeah, it isn't an easy journey. I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
In fact, there was something you said a bit earlier. We were chatting off air, and you were saying, you know, we sit here and you spend your time in boardrooms and you look strong and put together and everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then you get in the car and you perhaps break down and have a good cry. And then go home, but then in the morning you're back again and you're at that boardroom table. People don't see that. People don't know that there is that emotional side that goes into all of this, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but tell me about that.
Leanne, I think having a good cry in the car before and after is highly recommended, because I think it is acknowledging that it is tough. And I think sometimes it is important to know that you are going through a difficult time. Because I think at some point, some executives don't even know that they are sick. They don't even know that they are experiencing a level of pain because you have taught yourself, or you've had to just really, really survive and push through that. So that's a very interesting point. But I also want to add, or kind of to build on what you said about the 70 years, and to bank some of the successes. So if I look at those women and I learn about the history, I mean, I see real courage. And it is giving us courage. So when you are sitting there and you're having a tough time, you really want to kind of celebrate that. Because at that point in 1956, there were 7 million women in South Africa. And today there are 7 million employed women in South Africa. Yes, there's a lot of 36% of women are unemployed. But also, you know, we say in the care economy, when you study that, there's no such thing as an unemployed women, there's only an unpaid woman.
Yeah.
And but I do want to also celebrate the success.
Yeah, we always constantly have to celebrate the success, because there are successes. We're looking success in the face right now. But Moosa, I want to speak to you now, because bringing on this powerful facade as well, and putting on that front of strength, because you do come into an organization, for instance, like the SABC. Did you arrive as you arrived with authority? Or did you have to arrive in there and actually come in and start doing changes that made your authority even more powerful? Because there are changes that need to be made for women to not have to fight the way we're fighting right now, and not have to put on that armor and say, okay, well, I'm going to do this. There's certain changes that need to happen. From your side, did those changes happen?
Yes, so for my side, I've always thought that one had to lead with authenticity. And authenticity means that you are not, you agree that you are not a flawless person. And I always look at it, and we use the word authority. However, I tend to think we need to reframe that in a sense that when you walk into these institutions, more than anything, you need to build trust. So I believe in leading with trust rather than with authority, because I think trust is a currency that now more than ever is very critical in the roles that we find ourselves. So I think coming into this organization and you're expected to transform it and ensure that it's sustainable for future generations. It means that you really have to bring in this bold vision that people must buy into. And to buy into your vision, it means that you must create an environment that, that enables that. And one of the key things then is how do you transform, I suppose, a long-standing culture. So that's one of the things, and how do you learn to work within that culture and obviously evolve it. So that's one of the key things that I looked at, in a sense that the most important thing was to walk in and build that trust that says that I'm here at this point in time as a custodian of this institution, and I want to leave it in a much better place than I found it. So it's not about, earlier on somebody spoke about courage, is that when I look back at that march, and I think one of the most important things that it did was to bring about the, courage and also dignity. And that when we lead people, it's something that we need to think about, is that at the end of the day, everybody must feel that they are led and that their dignity is intact. And that's one of the things I try to inculcate within the SABC, to say that let's build the trust, let's bring in that human dignity, but let's also create an environment for everyone to thrive. And for us to build future leaders. And I think for me, that's the most important part, that it's not really about the authority, because you can assume authority, but to go in and say, I'm the boss, doesn't always work, because people must genuinely, authentically buy into your vision.
Yeah, I love that. I think you've said so many key points that we can pick on here. And for you, Candace, I mean, you've actually done a PhD in this. So there isn't anybody more qualified. In fact, personally, I was thinking of cancelling this whole panel and just letting you deliver your PhD, because you touch on so many important issues, and perhaps maybe we'll even pick up on a few more of them. But from what we've heard here, there are numbers and there are stats, but there's also the real story. And you uncovered a lot of that real story. From what we've just discussed now, what is it that you can offer in terms of what you've studied and looked at?
Absolutely, and I think as I was listening to the chair and some of the contributions, one of our findings in the research, so the research was a cohort across senior female executives in South Africa and the rest of Africa. And the primary question we were trying to answer with our research is, what is the exclusionary practices in the management ranks that perpetuates this underrepresentation of women in senior roles? So when we talk about senior roles, we talk about the GCEO of SAB, the CEOs, the chair people. And the question we ask is, if women hold up half of the sky, why are they not occupying half of these positions? And some of the themes that came out in the research is competency stereotyping. Competency stereotyping, as far as women is concerned, is that a female engineer is not going to be as successful as a male engineer. And as we dived into research, we understood that competency is not gender-based, right? So what should organizations be doing in terms of creating avenues for operational roles where women can actually participate? When you take it back to tertiary level, you'll find that women is still actually coming up with better grades. They're progressing well in terms of qualifications. But when they do hit the institutions, are we really making our workplaces friendly enough for women to actually make their way through? And I think what we've done specifically in Eskom is to say we have to start at the very beginning. So when we look at our talent pipelines, where the TVET colleges, where the universities, let's bursa with women, let's bursa with men, but be deliberate about it. Give yourself a target. 40%, 30%, 50% of our applicants must be female. When you go and you do searches in the C-suite, you brief your agencies to say, when we get the long list, we want to see women in that long list. Because I think if you don't sensitize organizations to not just making it policy, but make it practice, we're going to find ourselves in the situation where, sadly, when I started the research 2017-18, and I presented to the head of the research committee, and I shared a stat at the time, because researchers love stats, and the stat at the time was, it will take us 100 years to get to gender equality. And he looked at me, being a male, being a professor and a German, and he said, you're very ambitious if you think it's going to take 100 years. Wow. And sadly, 7 years later, he was correct.
Yeah. And that's a powerful note to take an ad break on, because we're going to take a very quick break. And I want to come back, and in my head, as you're speaking, I'm asking myself, just on a personal note, I've got a little 13-year-old daughter. What am I going to do differently that my problems that I'm facing right now are not going to be her problems? What do we change? And I want all of you to think about that, because it's not only about my daughter, it's about all of our daughters. And I talk about daughters that, you know, as women, we have a lot of children, not just the ones we gave birth to. We are the custodians of a lot of young dreams out there that are watching this. What are we going to change right now in our industry that is going to make their lives easier, and we don't have to wait 100 years? Let's take a break. Think about that at home as well. We'll be back after this.